Hello and welcome to Thursday Thoughts. Thursday Thoughts? What on earth are they, I hear you ask? Well, my friend Lucy and I meet every week over on Instagram to talk all things personal growth because she is as obsessed with it as I am. And we decided that we might as well put those conversations out as a weekly podcast. So now you can listen to us chat here on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And we'll be talking about topics such as spirituality, limiting beliefs, the ego, imposter syndrome, gratitude, meditation, confidence, and so much more. So if you're ready, here we go.
We're talking about habits. So I am sure most people watching or listening have probably heard of James Clear's Atomic Habits, which I read several years ago. But just the sort of four core things that he talks about when creating a habit are you've got to make it obvious, you've got to make it attractive, you've got to make it easy, and you've got to make it satisfying. So we can talk about those and then also talk about his idea of habit stacking, which is something that I find incredibly useful, actually, which essentially means that if you're trying to create a habit, one of the best ways of doing it is to tack it on to something in your life that you're already doing. So maybe that's, maybe when you are making your coffee in the morning, and if you want to start, say, I don't know, a gratitude journal, when you're making your coffee in the morning that you do as a matter of habit every single day, you can write your list of 5 things you're grateful for whilst you're making your coffee. Or if you want to, I'm just trying to think of some examples. For example, if you make a cup of tea in the afternoon and you're trying to do more strength training, you and I have talked about this before, haven't we? Doing some squats whilst you're waiting for your cup of tea to brew. So habit stacking is something that James Clear talks a lot about. But should we start by talking about how to those
Yeah,
sort of four principles of
yeah. Or maybe just even going back a little bit further than that about, habits in general,
yeah,
why
yeah,
because a habit, we all have habits, and habits actually are so important because, good, we all, we may go, I've got really good habits, I've got really bad habits, but the reason why we have habits is because it's our brain's very clever way to kind of be able to manage all of the things that we have to do in our lives. If we had to consciously think about everything, we just wouldn't, it would just take up so much capacity
yeah.
of our brain. So actually it's a really clever way to take away some of that responsibility. We can kind of do things on autopilot,
Yeah,
which
that's
is
so
great.
true.
But the problem is that when we create a habit which perhaps once served us really, really well, and we created those really lovely wide neural pathways in our brain, which are a bit like motorways because they are so well trodden, sometimes we don't want that habit anymore. So, for example, if you have got into a habit of constantly going towards thinking about the negative in a situation or complaining or something which you know generally it's there because ultimately, as we all now know, our brains are there to kind of try and keep us safe and defend us from any sort of danger. But if you are so used to doing that action again and again and again and again, that path just gets so well trodden and
Mm.
widened, and it's really difficult to actually to stop doing it. Not impossible though, because that's the whole thing with neuroplasticity. Now, scientists have discovered that it is absolutely 100% possible to reprogram these neural pathways.
And that
And and I
goes
think
for
a
any
really,
age, doesn't it?
yeah, at
At any age we can do
any
this.
but
Yeah.
also, I think, the best example I think everyone can really relate to when you think about kind of go on autopilot with habits is just if you take the same journey all the time, driving in your car, and suddenly you realize, you had that moment when you're like, my gosh, I was on such autopilot.
Yeah.
I just can't even remember how I got it. And that's just because you're just doing that thing. Your brain just knows what it's doing. So, yes, so we can take control of our thoughts, which is amazing. I mean, not our thoughts, yeah, but also our habits. And every habit. So, yeah, so there's also another really good book which I've read, which is by someone called Charles Duhigg. Oh, I've read lots of books on habits, actually. And BJ Fogg is another one who's got a book called Tiny Habits, and his premise is all about we've got to make these habits as tiny as possible to
Totally.
start with, because every habit has a trigger to start with. So there, whatever that trigger might be, it might be that you smell a really delicious smell. Maybe you smell the coffee and you're like, right, I'm going to make a coffee. Maybe it's you're walking in your house. You know, the trigger is, oh, I've walked in my house. I'm going to take my shoes off, whatever it is. So actually, if we want to take back control of some of our habits, it's really important that we are aware, firstly, of what are those triggers. And if we can kind of almost step in when that trigger comes up, whatever that might be. So yes, I boil the kettle. So that's your trigger. Normally what you do, you boil the kettle, I make a cup of tea. I boil the kettle, I might have a biscuit. You can use that to tack on, as you said before, another habit that you want to do, because you're doing that thing automatically anyway.
Exactly.
So if you can then tack on another habit, it's a great thing. Sometimes though, we have that trigger of, oh, I'm a bit bored, which is quite a common one. I'm a bit bored, so I'm going to pick up my phone, or I'm a bit bored, I'm going to go and have I'm going to go and see what I can eat in the cupboard. You know, so again, it's just if we can try and somehow, instead of just doing the thing on automatic, in automatic mode, can we bring, oh, I'm a bit bored, I'm going to look at my phone. Can we catch ourselves with awareness in that moment to go, okay, why am I doing that? It's because I'm a bit bored. So maybe actually a better option would be just to go outside and get a bit of fresh air and do that as well, you know?
Yeah.
Is that, yeah?
Totally. Just going back to one of the things that you said, which I think is so key to cultivating any kind of habits, and it's one of the main things that I think we have to think about if we're trying to start doing something that we've never done before, or we're trying to get back into something. You mentioned, making it really simple, making it really small, and this is such a big one because, for example, if we if we want to, start running 4 times a week, say, well, quite clearly, if we're not doing any running at all at the moment, that's a big ask of ourselves. So we want to make it absolutely tiny, like almost ridiculously small to start. So in the case of running 4 times a week, we want to start by laying our running clothes out and get it, at night before we go to bed. And then in the morning, we want to literally start that habit by getting into our running clothes. Because actually, when it comes, I mean, exercise is always a good example, isn't it, of habits? Because one of the things that I certainly find that if I get straight into my kind of workout gear, which frankly I wear half the time anyway, um, you're far more likely to go and do that exercise. So, for the first week, you just put your running gear on. For the second week, you go out for a 5 minute walk, and so and then the second week you go out for a 5 minute walk, and then you do a minute of running. The point is to make it so easy and such a no-brainer and so tiny, because before we kind of optimize our habits, we want to make sure that we're actually doing the tiniest version of it before we can then kind of get bigger and better and do more and more and more and more and more. So I think starting small is a really, really, really kind of important thing. Another example is if you want to start reading more, say, rather than going, right, I'm going to read a chapter every day, we'll start by reading 1 page a day, 1 page of a book. If you're writing a book, rather than telling yourself that you're going to write 5,000 words 5 days a week, which is clearly pretty major, just start by writing 1 paragraph or 1 page a day, 4 days a week or 3 days a week. So I think it's so easy to get overwhelmed by the thought of starting a new habit and kind of getting something else into your life. But we've got to make it tiny, 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 tiny. So that is the way that we're going to start. And going back to what I was saying at the very beginning about one of the things that James Clear says in Atomic Habits is we've got to make it obvious. And going back to running clothes, a way to make it obvious is to literally put your running clothes out the night before, so they are literally there. You see them when you wake up. If you want to start drinking more water, for example, fill up a cup of water and put it next to the kettle, because sometimes I think part of the problem is that we want to do all these things, but we literally forget. We just forget to do them. Um, put the book that you want to start reading, put it right by your bed so that you just make it really, really, really obvious. So I think, making it obvious and making it easy,
Yeah.
that's kind of where it all starts, because
Yeah.
from there we can start to build on that. But first of all, we've got to make it obvious, and then we've got to make it ridiculously easy to make sure that we're just going to start it. And even if that seems pointless and ridiculous, it's not, because we've got to start somewhere with baby steps.
Well, it's that whole thing, isn't it? If you just, I think it was James Clear who said this. If you just do something, you improve and do the thing 1%
Yeah,
more every day, you will, by the end of the year, have an improvement of 37% over the whole year. And so, that's better than doing absolutely nothing. Even if it feels so micro and tiny, it's better than doing absolutely nothing. If you think, there's an aeroplane can go off course by 1 degree and it ends up somewhere totally and
yeah,
utterly different. The other thing which is important to remember as well is that the habit loop is that you have that trigger, then you do the behavior, the action, and then it's always completed by a reward, because you get something out of every behavior. You do a behavior because you're going to get either a feel good feeling, or you're going to get some sort of, you're going to get a physical cup of tea or whatever it is out of it. So whenever you do if you're practicing a new behavior, a new habit, which you want to instill, so let's say it is exercise, and you go outside, you do even if it's a walk, it's so important. A way to really try and really instill that new habit and behavior is to give yourself do a little celebration, even if it's just like in your head, yes, well done, even if it's like a little fist pump to yourself or clap yourself or whatever it is, because that really helps to program into your brain that yes, that was enjoyable, there's a reward here, I want to do it again. And that you're so
yeah,
much more likely to do it again if you have that little celebration, after a gym workout, often everyone claps or cheers. It makes you want to do it again. So we've got to, and then that releases the dopamine into your brain, and we're
yeah,
kind of like, yes, I'm going to come back for more, I want to do this again. And often, that's why after exercise and stuff, you do get all of those feel good hormones anyway, to make you want to come and do it again. Um, the other thing I was going to say actually is, oh gosh, what was I going to say? I had something else I was going to bring up then. Oh, I can't remember.
one other thing on
Yeah, go
this
on.
this topic, and this might even be what you were going to say, but we can also do habit tracking. So we can literally put something on the wall where you cross off. And so that's another way. It's just on the subject of reward, on the subject of making it satisfying. If you track your habits, whether that's in a diary or a calendar that you've got on the wall, so you literally cross off the day when you've done the thing, and that motivates you. Oh, you
I
got it
always do
right
this. So,
there.
but this is just like my running plan at the moment, because I'm getting back into running again. And yeah, I literally did a run this morning. I've ticked it off. And for me, this is such a good way to just keep myself accountable. I
Yeah,
love to be able to tick it off. I like to see I like also to know where I'm going with it. And it just really helps just to build it up step by step. And you can do that with any habit. Just, yeah, tick it off if you want to do it. If you want to do something small every single day, tick it off. I did hear that, there's so many, there are so many different narratives out there about how long it actually takes to form a new habit.
I
I think
know.
it's
Some people say
anywhere
30 days,
between,
some people say 60.
yeah, I think it's anywhere between 18 days and 280 days or something like that. But then I did hear some neuroscientists say that it takes about 66 days to actually be able to get more automatic actions, to program your brain for your actions to become, yes, more automatic. And so that just really highlights the absolute need for consistency,
Yeah,
for repetition. Forming a new habit does not happen after just 1 or 2 times, or even like 2 weeks. I
yeah,
really do believe you have got to commit to yourself. That's the biggest thing. Commit that you are going to do it, and then do it consistently, which is why doing it small and taking those small steps is so important, because otherwise you're just not going to keep it up. It's got to form part of your life. So it's really about looking at your lifestyle and thinking, right, where am I going to fit this in? How am I going to fit this in? And just making that commitment. And I always think that if you can, well, it's about working out how you work, knowing yourself so well. If you are someone who very easily sacks it off very quickly and says, oh, can't be bothered, you've got good intention for a few days, and then you're like, oh, can't be bothered. Get support, get an accountability partner, get a coach, get somebody who is going to hold you accountable. Because
Yeah.
if you want to do it, do it. Don't stop yourself, because ultimately you will feel so rubbish about yourself
Yeah.
if you don't follow through on the things that you want to do. That is when we feel stuck. That's when we get stagnant. That's when we get really down on ourselves. That's when our negative thought patterns really can start taking over, because you're like, oh God, I can never keep to anything. I'm so rubbish. So if you want to do it, make that commitment and do what it takes. Invest in
Yeah.
yourself. Do whatever it takes to do it, because it will become a habit. I know I have changed so many habits, and particularly more recently, that it is just the best feeling when it's just become something that you do. But it
Yeah.
does take effort and it takes work. And what anyone ever tells you, if anyone says it's going to be easy, it's not true. It takes, it's possible, but it does take commitment.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you've got to make it easy as possible for yourself, so you're going to do it. But there are going to be days when you go, oh, can't be bothered. I
Yeah.
don't want to do it.
Absolutely.
Rant
Completely. I
over.
can no, you're so right. And on that, actually, it's really important to make sure that you know what your why is for doing this habit. Like, why do you want to do this habit? Don't just pick something because it's the kind of latest trend, or because it's January and everybody else is, do it. Actually, I personally think it's a really good idea to start habits, not at the beginning of January, because it's just such a cliche, isn't it? Everyone's doing New Year's resolutions and blah, blah, blah. And we all know that everybody, most people fall off of those. So actually now, here we are in May, it's as good a time to start something as any, because I think it's almost like if you don't start at that kind of classic time in January, then, you're more likely to sort of, does that make sense? I'm kind of rambling on about
Yeah, yeah,
something
yeah,
slightly
yeah.
irrelevant, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think think about why do you want to create this habit? Why do you want to drink more water? Why do you want to read more? Why do you want to exercise? You have to, ultimately, you're much more likely to do something if it's something that you yourself truly want to do, not because you've seen it on Instagram, not because your best mate's doing it, not because your sister's doing it, whatever. Make sure it's something that you really, truly want to do, and ask yourself, why do I want to do this? How is this going to benefit me? Because, of course, habits can so often be tied into our goals. And one of the things that one of the main things that James Clear talks about is we've got to be more focused on our systems than our goals. So we can, when it comes to habits, we can be thinking about the kind of grander plan of why we're doing it and where we want to go to. But actually, what we want to be focusing on is the systems that we have in place to take the actions every single day. Now I've forgotten what the other thing I was going to say. I was going to, no, sorry, you go, love.
Yeah, no, totally. It's so important to do that. And yet at the same time, to appreciate that sometimes you will fall off track, and there will be times where it's just not possible for you to do the thing. And so in those situations, the best thing to do is firstly be really kind to yourself. Don't beat yourself up,
Yeah,
because it's going to
totally.
happen. But the most important thing is that you let it go, and then you
Yeah.
just get back the next day and you just start again, because actually it's very easy in those situations to go, oh no, I've blown it, that's it, I'm not gonna, I can't stick to anything, and then you don't go back to it. But the most important thing is that you just don't let that happen.
100%.
Another day, you just get back to it.
Yeah.
A very quick break to ask you to hit the follow or subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you're enjoying this episode, I'd be super grateful if you could hit those stars and rate it too. Thank you.
And the same, I mean, and the same thing with, and because we're talking about here, I suppose, about creating new habits, but also this can apply to trying to break habits existing habits that that you already have. And again, I think the same applies, with those. What I think the easiest way to do is to try and replace that habit that you don't want, the unhelpful habit, with something which is better. So for example, I used to be a big coffee drinker, and then I got to a point in my life where it just wasn't. I just knew it wasn't serving me well. I was getting quite panicky, kind of heart palpitations, and I kind of thought it's got to be the coffee. So actually, I had to wean myself off it. And the only way really I could do that was by replacing those drinks with different sorts of drinks. So every time I thought, oh, I need a coffee, I would go and instead have a herbal tea or a chai latte or something really nice, something different. And that was, that basically was the reason why I could do it. If I just went, right, I'm not having any hot drinks at all now, that would have just been too hard, because it's kind of it was almost the ritual of it, which I was enjoying, not necessarily the coffee. And I think that's a lot of these habits we have. It is kind of the ritual and the stories and the feelings that these kind of rituals give us. So, yes, again, if you fall off the wagon, though, don't beat yourself up. Just try and get back on. But yes.
Yeah, that is such a big one, because it's so easy to just quit, like you just said. And we've all done it, where we've started really well, and then after, whatever it is, a few days or a few weeks, then we fall off it and we don't do it for, say 1 or 2 days. And like you so rightly say, that is absolutely key. If we allow ourselves to just go, oh, well, what's the point? Well, there's no point now because I just haven't done it. No. Get exactly like you said, we've got to get back on it. That's a really big one, because apart from anything else, we are going to do that. We are all going to do that. Like even the people who are the most disciplined and who've kind of got the most habits in place and are really committed and all the rest of it, even they have days where they fuck up and they fail to do the thing that they wanted to do. We all do it. So that is so crucial. We've got to just get back on the horse the next day, and not completely quit. It's so important. One thing I just want to talk briefly about, that I mentioned at the beginning, is this idea of adding, well, you've mentioned it as well, this idea of adding one habit onto another habit, because I think this can be actually really useful, and it makes it easier to get another habit into your life. And so for example, if you want to, I'm as you know, Polly, I'm obsessive about what I allow into my mind. I'm obsessive about who I hang out with, what I listen to, what I watch, all of it, who I follow. If you want to, for example, start listening to better content, and so let's say you want to start listening to one podcast a day, that is about something inspiring, or that is about personal development, whatever it is, you could, for example, when you go on your daily walk, listen to it then. I mean, that's such an obvious one, but it is obvious, but not everyone's probably doing that. So that's a good example of, well, you could listen whilst or if there's somewhere you have to walk to, you walk to the shop every day, listen to it then. It's such a good way of adding habits in to create them around something that you're already doing. I'm just trying to think of more examples of this. I said about the doing squats while you're making a cup of tea, but I'm just trying to, can you think of any examples of this of habit stacking? Like, if you're...
So I did this when I was trying to build a meditation practice. So for me, it was very simple. It was kind of like, after I had my shower in the morning, I would then sit down and do some breath work or do some meditation. So that was, but obviously I've got to allow myself enough time to be able to do that. So you have got to be, think about it. I've got to make sure that I've got the time. But actually, that is kind of when when I do that. Or, I pretty much get up most mornings. When I get up, I just put my workout gear on and I'll go and exercise. And that is just a habit now, which I just do. Because, and even, the weekend, Saturday night, I went out to a party. So I was really quite hungover yesterday. I didn't exercise yesterday, but I went for a walk. But, today, straight back on it, Monday morning, 5:27, my alarm goes off, put my workout gear on, and I went for a run. And yeah, and it's just become that it's not even a I don't even have a conversation in my mind about it. It's
Yeah,
just like,
yeah.
this is what I do.
Well, that's a
This
true
is what I do.
habit. That's
Yeah.
the true habit when you don't even have a conversation in your mind. And actually, that's reminded me of one thing that I've started doing on top of another habit. So I now do my strength training after I've done my rebounder session. So I'm in the habit of using my rebounder 3 or 4 times a week in the morning, first thing. And now and again, like you say, it's something that obviously that has added like a good 20 minutes, if not a bit more, onto my workout. But now I'm getting really into the habit of as soon as I finish my rebounder session, which can be anything from 10 minutes to 25 minutes, as soon as I come off it, I go straight into doing, my
Yeah.
squats and my this and my that. You just make it non-negotiable. Like you say, if you go, go straight from one thing to another. And it's such a great feeling, isn't it? When you realize that you have finally cultivated a habit and then you literally do it without thinking. But again, we've only got a couple of minutes left, but I really do think that one of the key things to this is, and one of the main things to tell yourself if you really want to do something but you're feeling overwhelmed by it and you feel like you can't do it, I think the most important thing actually is to keep it simple and to keep it small. I think well, in my opinion anyway, that's got to be the most important thing, just to get you into the routine of doing something. So rather than telling yourself you're going to drink 8 glasses of water a day, personally I use a 1 litre bottle. That makes it a hell of a lot easier than drinking 8 glasses. But if you want to start drinking 8 glasses of water a day, don't overwhelm yourself. But you're going to be sort of obsessing about it all day. And, if you don't do it, you'll feel really bad. Just drink 1 glass of water a day to start with. And yeah, I think we're so much more likely if we break it down to tiny little things, especially with something like exercise or anything really. Just get in the habit of doing it for a couple of weeks, the kind of micro version, before you then build it up to the habit that you want it to look like down the line.
Yeah, and also try and anticipate your excuses and the things which are going to distract you away. Try and anticipate what they might be and put things in place to stop those. So for example, if you know in the morning, so say you've committed to yourself that you want to get out of bed at a certain time to do whatever it might be, to exercise, to do some meditation or whatever, and you know that you're going to hit snooze, well, then just make sure that you maybe don't have it. Well, you just literally set an alarm after an alarm after alarm after alarm, so you can't actually do that. You actually, or put your phone or your alarm out of your room like you do, and so you've got to get out of bed. So just really anticipate, how do I normally react? How might I react in that situation? And just put things in place. And as you say, the environment, as you've mentioned, is so important.
Yeah.
Make the environment so damn easy for success that actually your excuses are not going to be valid because everything's just exactly where you need. I've got a set of weights and a yoga mat and stuff in my kitchen. So for those days where sometimes I am at home and I don't make it to the gym, I can do something in the kitchen, or, it's just making it easy. If I had to get everything out of a deep, dark cupboard and get it all out, it would be really, really hard.
Totally. And just on the flip side of that, actually, if you're thinking about breaking the habit, so in the way that we're talking about making something obvious and making it attractive, on the flip side of that, so for example, say you want to cut down drinking or quit drinking, don't make it obvious, make it the opposite of that, make it invisible. So don't have the wine in the fridge or in the cupboard, or do you know what I mean? And we haven't talked so much about breaking bad habits, but that's one of the things. It's you just invert those 4 things: make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. You just sort of invert those if you're trying to break a bad habit,
like having the chocolates and the biscuits in the cupboard. I mean, that is something I know myself so well that if there is chocolate and biscuits and things like that in the cupboard, I will eat them. I know I will. So I just can't have them in the house. My kids hate me for it, but I just can't have them in the house because I will eat them. So
I'm exactly the same. Totally. Well, it's past exactly. So
Perfect.
we should finish there.
Yeah.
Is there anything else, Polly, that you wanted to
No,
share?
I just think it's such, I love the topic of habits because actually I think some of us kind of can label ourselves about, well, I'm just the kind of person who can't get up and out of bed in the morning, or I'm just the kind of person who is always thinking negative, I'm a half glass empty kind of person, whatever it is. And actually these labels do not define you. They can absolutely be changed. We have so much more control over our actions, our behaviors, our thoughts, our beliefs than I think any of us realize.
Yeah.
And actually, which is so liberating. So, yes, never ever label yourself because you can change a habit. Even, I hate to admit it, it's one of the biggest regrets of my life, but I used to smoke loads, cigarettes loads in my 20s. And that habit I thought I was never going to break, and thank God I did. But so that's like the worst habit to break because it's such a addictive habit. So it is totally possible to break. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's all good.
All right, my dear. Well, it's been a pleasure as always.
Thank you.
What were we talking about? We have already decided what we're talking about next week, haven't we? But I can't remember what it is now. Was it following what feels good?
I think so. Yes.
I think it was. Yeah.
Okay.
Looking forward to that one.
All right. Have a
All
good
right, love. You
day.
too. Lots of love.
Bye.
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 Bye.